Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, executive coach for high performing women. Join me for inspiring conversations with over 500 women leaders around the world as they share how they excelled in their careers or launched successful businesses and the important role that support played along the way. Because as we always say, having it all does not mean doing it all alone. Here we go. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And today I am glad to welcome our guest, Anna Radulovski. Anna is the author of the book Chief in Tech, How Women Are Breaking the Silicon Ceiling and Leading with Impact. And she is the founder and CEO of the WomenTech Network, a global community with 150,000 members across 179 countries. Now, the WomenTech Network provides mentorship, career development, and networking opportunities, connecting women in the industry with leaders across all different companies such as Amazon, Microsoft, and IBM. Anna also hosts the Women in Tech Global Conference and the Chief in Tech Summit, which brings together thousands of executives and professionals to discuss leadership, innovation, and diversity in tech. So, as you can see, Anna is all about connection. And on this episode of the Support is Sexy podcast, we dive into some of the ways to establish authentic connections. And this is whether you're connecting for a new position or an investor in your business. So from LinkedIn to raising your visibility and influence to power networking through shared values and so much more, there are many different avenues for you to build your support network. So, without further ado, my conversation with Anna Radulovski. Okay, there you go. How are you?
All good. Lots of
Good.
different things are going on. We have our global conference, as you may know. I had an interview today where I was interviewing a leader. So now it's in a different format.
Now
But
you're
really
being
excited.
interviewed.
Yeah, now I'm being interviewed. Yeah. There is joy in doing both of the things. I love interviewing people. That's why I also, for my book, I interviewed over 50 leaders. And it was, I think, the best part of it.
Yes,
Well,
that was same with my book. Interviewing people is what I enjoy most. I can do interviews or be interviewed, but I love just
right?
hearing people's story.
Yeah, and I think there's like so much to learn. And I think at certain moment you just deep dive into their stories and you just don't notice time. And I think that's how kind of we schedule with some leaders like 40 minutes or an hour. Actually, usually it
Yeah.
was an hour, but then we like extended for an hour and 20, an hour and 40. And it was like, I don't know, how did they feel? I mean, I felt really inspired and motivated. I was like, I could be asking more and more and more because it's like whatever they share, I want to deep dive into that. Well, that was really exciting. I don't know. Well, actually, you're a book author yourself. I love the title of that book. As
Thank you.
I don't know if I should call myself a recovering superwoman, but something like that. I think that all of the high achievers are kind of are superwomen, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be asking for help. And that's why support is sexy.
That's right. That's why support is sexy. Well, that's exactly
Yeah,
right. And I say that too. I try not to, for lack of a better word, shame super women or certainly not ambitious
not at
women
all.
because,
Yeah.
but like you said, it's about being aware of asking for support, or at least in my case, doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you even
Yeah.
stronger.
Yeah, and I think that when we look at different people, I don't mean just women, the term this self-made, I think that it's a little bit saying like and it's creating that illusion that you should make it yourself, otherwise you will be a failure, and it's not like fair, kind of, and it's not like you really, really made it and you deserve it, you earned it. But in reality, we have so many people from the early age to until we get, more senior in our career. We get so many people who opened doors for us, who believed in us, who encouraged, who hired, trained, bet on us, invited to speak, tons of things. Like if you think about it, who makes it alone? Seriously, you can
No
be
one.
great. Yeah, and I think that it's really important we kind of credit people and say, hey, and even just sending them a note and saying, that advice you shared with a year back, I actually still carry it in my heart. That's how I'm teaching my teams right now. And I think that we cannot thank all, our mentors or allies or people who are advisors, our personal board of advisors. I think that we just need to always be thinking how we can kind of give it back to them or create opportunities for them. It's like this never-ending circle of like support and energy, and kind of I'm thinking about you. I just thought about you. There is this holiday, so there is this important occasion, and I celebrate you because you really made an impact. For me and so it's for other people, and I think that is crucial. So, and I love how you said it. Like, it doesn't mean that, and not shaming or say, hey, you can be that, but you can be also, leaning into your network, or thinking of how you can be expanding your support network. And you could be do much more magic, I think, in a way. But yeah, that's something we'll deep dive with you. But just kind of wanted to share that. Appreciate the work you're doing and so many episodes recorded. That is really impressive.
Oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate just hearing your perspective or how it resonated with you. And I will say nothing taught me the lesson more than about what you said about saying thank you. I think people don't realize how far a thank you goes, especially when
Yeah.
it's great, obviously, when it's immediate, but especially if it's something later, that advice you shared with me, etc. I remember my aunt actually shared with me, this was many years ago. She told me about basically it's the profit first method, but for her, it was just putting different money in different envelopes for your different bills and things. I
Hmm.
remember her telling me that years ago. And then I read Profit First many years later as an entrepreneur. I was like, this is the method that my Aunt Georgie taught me. So one day I was driving
Love
in my
that.
car and I called, she's this older woman from Alabama and this is how she divvies up her monies. So I called her one day and I just said in my car, hey, there's this method. I just read this book. It
Hmm.
reminded me of you, etc. She was so happy to hear from me. And Anna, 2 weeks later, she passed away.
Mm.
So I never, ever forgot that I was
Love
able
that.
to just say a simple thank you to her. We
Yeah,
chatted about other
yeah.
things, but it was
And I'm
just, I was
sure she
thinking about her.
appreciated so much
She
that,
did.
you
She was
know,
so
it,
happy to hear that.
it kind of makes a difference if you think about it. And I think that if we practice that more often, we will be having stronger, relationships where people feel more valued. And, one of the leaders I interviewed, she shared something. She said she's misses because it's like a dying art that someone, for example, will send you a personalized card for like your birthday or any occasion, but just kind of handwritten. And I love that. I'm thinking, how can we do more of that?
Look, I have in my drawer, I'm showing you for everyone, of course, isn't seeing visual, but I have my little thank you notes. When I see pretty thank you notes, I just buy them and just keep them because, as you said, people
Yeah, I
don't
love
do
that.
personal notes
Yeah.
anymore and you just send them to people.
And
Well,
we
speak.
are, yeah, we are evolving. And one of the things, that helps us stay in touch with our people from our network is different social networks. And I love LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan. I use it
Me too.
actively. And I think that can bring so much. And I think the people there, they have really this great professional ethics. Of course, here and there you can have tons, but at least my audience, I think that even if and when they disagree with me or they have a different perspective, I love that because it actually helps me see things from different angles. And they still do it in a very, very respectful way. And that's, I think, the beauty of LinkedIn in comparison to other social media networks.
Let's start there then. Speaking, I was going to ask you about LinkedIn. It's one of my favorite platforms too. I always say it's where I have the
Yeah.
biggest audience. I'm on all the things because I believe on getting your name on all platforms, even if you're not actively using it at the time. But LinkedIn is the place where I connect with women who are looking for executive coaching or just inspiration or things around support, which is what I talked about. I know you're very active on LinkedIn. So when you speak about tips for women entrepreneurs, especially in tech specifically, what would you say are some of the ways that they can leverage LinkedIn or ways that you have leveraged LinkedIn that's been really successful since we started off right away talking about connection?
Yeah, LinkedIn connecting people. Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of tips that women leaders, women entrepreneurs, pretty much everyone who wants to leverage their professional networks. And I do agree, by the way, with you leveraging all the platforms. So kind of getting your name there. I think number one is optimizing your profile. So just make sure that it's really clear who you are and what you do and what value can you bring to others. In terms of bringing the value, I would say post regularly. And I know it's a huge struggle because, especially when you start, if you haven't been ever creating a content, it just kind of can feel weird, or you would be posting just randomly at certain, occasions. For example, like it's a Women's History Month, or maybe it is Women's Entrepreneurship Day, or just an event you went to, and that's okay. I would say for a start, like don't really compare your start somewhere at someone who is having like millions of followers, because you need to get there. So just gonna be okay, and if experiment, I think it gives also freedom to experiment, but find that regularly what that would be for you. I know some people recommend post twice a week. It's hard. I mean, unless you're into content creation, if you have a full-time job, I mean, I love that, but I also struggle to be irregular. But I realize the value it can bring. So I think once you will be seeing the results, especially discouraging when you don't see results, and again, you might be comparing yourself to someone else in your network. Number two is very important. Don't think that it's only about yourself and the content you're posting. Yes, that's important, but it's as important how you're engaging with others. So commenting on the post, participating in different discussions, building that authentic connections, and of course connecting with people, because it's not just a network where you can post things. You can actually reach out to people, ask for advice, find different opportunities. But even, for example, if women entrepreneurs want to get noticed by investors, so to say, to attract funding, if they post regularly about what is they're doing, even that, different winning moments. So for example, they had a presence at the event. You need to be super active, literally. You want people to know about you. You want to be tagging people at every single event you went to, and make sure that you're like this, creating this mini reports, so to say. So even your potential investors, you might get noticed. So because you want to start building relationships with pretty much tons of people in your ecosystem, especially if you're fundraising and you want to be really visible and vocal. And what is a better way than actually telling your story on your own terms? Of course, it's if you can get on a podcast, or get interviewed by a leading media, or even a local media outlet, depending on where you are. It can give lots of opportunities. And I would say use also storytelling. Like data is great. Of course, data is important. You want to back it up with data. You want to find stats and research, but people won't remember data. They will remember stories. So I think that storytell in a way that people would feel something. So you can entertain them, you can educate them, you can inspire, motivate them. So what is that you could be doing in your own way? And again, it's about experimenting. I know that right now, for example, LinkedIn have like pushing really video format, but it's still, if it's not your thing, you're not yet there, you could be creating content that you are comfortable with creating, and then once you get there, let's say here I'm able to produce quality content, you can start experimenting with a format that maybe comes a little bit more difficult to you, or another way around, maybe you're great with video, so start with that. So it's a bit playing around like with any platform. And again, always expanding your reach, reaching out to people. I think kind of COVID accelerated that for us. So we started connecting across different countries, like without borders, so to say. So I think there are tons of limitations that are in your head, and you could be connecting with people from across the globe, and finding different links, and also thinking of people who are super connectors, who can introduce you and like create this connections and say, hey, I know Elaine, or I know Anna, she's doing this or that. I was thinking I could connect you to because of this, or maybe you can even ask people, of course, so they can make a more relevant intro. So yeah, there are tons of ways you can really like leverage LinkedIn, and it's about being intentional, understanding what value can you bring, and if you don't know what value it can bring, you can also reach out to people for who it has worked, because they will give you really great advice.
Yes, no, that's all great advice. Another thing I think, and what do you think? Another thing I share, I should say, with clients that I work with, sometimes people say, I don't know what to share. I don't have anything to add. I
Yeah,
don't, like you said, it's so much in our head. But I always suggest too, sometimes asking questions is a great way to share content. So
yeah,
sometimes I might see, especially if it's something within your field, but that you're not a quote unquote expert in. So say certain technology, for example, I'm very intrigued by AI right now.
yeah,
So if I see an interesting article, I'm certainly not going to comment as an expert, but I say, say, I saw this article, this is what I thought, what do you think? That still counts as content in a way that you could potentially engage people. So you could be curious, you could say this conference is coming up. I just saw a post about this
Yeah,
conference coming up. Is anyone else attending? It can be more
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
conversational. Don't feel like you always have to post. And as far as you don't always have to teach in your post, you're really about,
Yeah,
like you said, connecting.
true, true. I agree. I used to, whenever I was going like to a new country or city, I was like, I'm going to be headed to this conference, for example. Who should I
Who's
connect
gonna,
with? And then people start
right.
taking, wow, this was so cool because I connected with amazing people and people were able to kind of make that warm introduction. This was a game change. So thanks for sharing that. I think this is truly important. And you need to always stay curious and open-minded and not just like, kind of don't focus so much on yourself. Of course, you need to be thinking how your content can bring value. But value could be not just to educate, for example, it could be something entertaining, or sometimes you're also learning from others, but because they love giving advice, so it goes both ways. And they also get visible to your network. So it's a win-win at the end of the day.
So let's talk about then. Speaking of connection, Women Tech Network has now over 150,000 members. Is that right? Across
That's
179
correct. Yeah.
countries. So we started off talking about LinkedIn, which could be your sort of
Yeah.
pod or small. Well, it could be big, but it also could be for anyone who's just starting out. But when you think about a global network or an access to a global network like Women Tech, tell us how that started for you. Actually, I'll go back even more. How did your love of technology begin for you? What brought your interest to that field?
That's a really great question. Um, I think I got fascinated with technology to its fullest capacity much later in my career. It was not like prominently put to me. There were some role models like my aunt, who I remember when I was 5 and she just kind of started working with computers. And when I was little, I said like, well, and they were asking like, who do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be like my aunt, to be working with computers. So it sounded kind of silly because I didn't understand what she was
No, that's
doing.
great.
But,
Hmm.
having that role models is important. And later I understood how important it is. Before Women Tech Network, I started with coding girls. And that's where I wanted to validate my assumption based on the research that I was seeing and doing also. I saw that there are so few women in technology, and I found out that everything starts in the childhood when girls are encouraged to be nurturing and caring and given Barbies or different tea sets and, to be leaning towards different jobs that go in that direction. And boys are encouraged to be brave and given these Lego sets, different engineering kind of sets where they can be creative. And problem solve and kind of be encouraged to be bold, take risks. And, it all starts in the childhood. Of course, now knowing what we know, we are able to change that narrative. But some of the behaviors are so deeply ingrained in the society. It's not like it's one person's fault or why parents behave like that. It's just so ingrained, and it just takes time to change how systems operate. It's systems. It's unconscious bias is unconscious for a reason because it was so deeply ingrained, and for so many years we haven't seen strong role models that we could say, hey, I want to become like her one day, or it's normal for women to be doing this or that. And I think things are changing. And at the same time, creating networks like Women Tech Network started with one simple but powerful idea: to create a space where women in technology can connect, grow, and, well, ultimately thrive. So I saw that there are lots of barriers that women face, and I was talking to women. I was always curious. We spoke with you about, that kind of talking to people and interviewing in a way. So I was always interested in people's stories. And then, one of the tipping point was when I realized that there are so many like local or niche groups, but I realized that this is not like a regional problem. It's not in one country. So generally you can go as big as you want, but there was also an interest when we started with coding girls. Women from other countries started to reach out and say, hey, can we do something like coding girls, but in our country? And then it started kind of scaling. More and more people started to ask for that. But then I realized that coding girls is great, but women don't want to be called girls. So we could do something for women in technology. And step by step, it started to accelerate. And pivotal moment for us was during COVID, where we had to actually cancel all of our in-person events across the globe. We had more than 50 events. And then we were like, hey, what are we going to do now? And then we took some time off and kind of thinking, how can we actually fuel this challenge? How can we turn this challenge into opportunity and think of new ways how we can continue our mission? Because there were nothing happening. There were no events. People were frustrated, lonely, like suddenly, well, you remember how it was. And then we thought, well, we're women in technology, so technology can help us, make this transition. So we pivoted into this huge global conference. We introduced our ambassador program. Like in just a couple of months, we had more than 4,000 ambassadors. Like due date, we have more than 12,000 ambassadors. So that's how we also managed to use that opportunity to accelerate. I think there are tons of different things that are just in our mind, and we like see different limitations and not seeing challenges as opportunities also. But it takes time, and it's like also you need to be thinking how. I think it's a little bit like productive discomfort, because we didn't want to let our team go. We wanted, how can we kind of like keep them, loved our team, and then we were thinking of different ways to kind of sustain that, but not just survive, but also thrive in technology. And yeah, and later on started also with executive women in tech, and yeah, kind of making this at Coding Girls WomenTech Network, executive women in tech, and learning about different career stages. And it's also I shared with you as part of my executive interviews for the Chief in Tech book, also been learning a lot of valuable insights and advice, actionable, practical, that I'm sharing in my book.
Let's talk a little bit then about women in tech, women in general, but women executives, women in tech, since we're talking about the network, the importance of getting uncomfortable, which is something that we're going to go through as we build our businesses, but even as we develop as leaders and decision makers. How can women position themselves to become leaders and decision makers in tech and business?
No, that's a really great question. I'm thinking about three things here when it comes to positioning: visibility, credibility, and influence. So when it comes to visibility, women need to strategically position themselves by taking on high impact projects. And sometimes, or oftentimes, they won't be just given to you unless there is a certain situation. For example, a leader leaves and you need to take on this project. So you need to be asking for them, or, putting yourself in rooms where you could be asking for them. Also, when it comes to credibility, building a strong professional, like personal brand, so to say. So you need to be known as an expert. You need to be, of course, very visible, and consistently advocating for your ideas, but surrounding yourselves also with allies. So if you say something and it's been repeated by people who your allies in the room, it just kind of sticks better, and then you are given a credit that is due. Also seek out sponsors, because these are the people who are instrumental in your career growth. They will actively champion and say your name in the decision-making rooms. So there are a couple of things that you can do yourself, but there where you need support that we're talking about, right? And I think it's neither. I mean, some people really, they say that they kind of do it all themselves, and we admire them. And there are other people who also do it themselves and lean on other people who are instrumental in their career growth. So, I mean, even if you make it to the top, you need to stay on top. So how do you make sure you stay on top? You need allies, you need sponsors. Mentors, of course. I mean, it doesn't mean that you don't need mentors anymore. You just might need new mentors. That's the difference.
What are your tips for networking? I know this is a word it's a buzzword for some people. It's a trigger word for some people, depending on your personality. Some people think networking, we have all these, I won't even say misconception. Everybody has their own perception of what networking needs to look like. Just like we talked about earlier with posting on LinkedIn, it can look a lot of different ways. The engagement is what's important. But when you are certainly within the network or at your conferences and encouraging women at all levels to be able to connect with people. What are your tips for maybe power networking, especially to open doors to funding, to partnerships, and to other opportunities?
When it comes to funding, I think number one advice is actually two pieces of advice. Number one, start building that relationships much earlier that you needed. For example, you could be, instead of asking directly, an investor or VC for funding, you could be just updating them on your progress. So that's how you build trust. You would say, I want to share with you this milestone. So not directly, hey, of course you can say we are fundraising, but then kind of be a little bit more strategic and invest into long-term relationships versus kind of make it transactional in a way. We're looking for funding. I know when startups are pitching there, you like pitching everywhere because you want to maximize the opportunity. But I would focus on building relationships, and before you need that to build that trust with your potential investor, obviously. And I'm a true believer that I call it how can I help mindset. So I'm always thinking, how can I help people? I know networking is two-way street, but I'm thinking that how can I give value to this person? I'm always thinking, even when I'm asking something, I'm still thinking, how can I give value to this person? What is that I have access to that this person could get access in a way through my network? Is it resources? Is it certain people? Is it maybe some opportunities that I have as part of? Because I'm thinking that all of us are really powerful and we can kind of provide value. But if we focus not from what can I get from this person and focus on how can I help this person, then I think we shift the conversation into being more giving. And generally being, of course, I think that there are a couple of things here. Thinking of being intentional with networking, so know why you're doing this. Sometimes, of course, you just maybe want to search for a new perspective, but if you are like thinking of building partnerships or getting certain opportunities, then you need to have your pitch ready. But keep it really, I mean, two things maybe. Keep it simple in a way, but customize it depends on who you're talking to. Because if you make it really complicated, the issue also with startups or founders who are fundraising or pitching, the way they explain sometimes it's really complex. And they make it very technical or very complicated or add different buzzwords, for example, unique solution. Or it used to be this like, we use AI. Of course, now you don't say that, but it used to be like, if you use AI, it sounds innovative. So really be clear, like polish your pitch. I mean, at Founder Institute, we have like Mad Libs where you can literally exactly write the words that you need to be saying and keep it really short, but up to the point, like add your secret sauce and don't use buzzwords. If you use buzzwords, it automatically becomes really vague and not clear. But again, like have your data ready whenever we're diving too much into already fundraising or getting like into entrepreneurships. Maybe if you come back to networking, kind of try to a little bit have a conversation, not just exchange. If it's in person, for example, online is different. So if we take in-person networking events, like try to have that chat. I really hate when people just give you this business cards or whatever. I don't know if now people do that. I don't even know where my business cards are.
Right.
But they just kind of, whenever I use LinkedIn and scan this code, and that kind of works, but you do want to have a conversation at least. I mean, don't kind of like in a way.
Or just the what do you do as opposed to trying to learn who are you? I always say what excites you? What are you excited
Yeah, I
about
love
these
that.
days?
I love
What a
that.
more conversation.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
what are you excited about?
this question, people maybe sometimes get really defensive, or if they do something not exciting in their own opinion, they would you say, what do you do? Or they maybe it's very complicated for them to explain in a way or whatever. They just what I like to be asking, what is that about your job that you love doing? Or what brings you here? What makes you passionate? What you kind of shift the conversation because sometimes people do something boring. They do it for a living, but they have like their startup idea on the side, for example, or they do something else that they're passionate about, like they maybe volunteer in a nonprofit and they do mentorship that. So they will start talking about that. And you want to be finding these ways to connect with people and ask more refreshing, let's say, questions. I mean, I think then, and also seeing networking as not an opportunity to kind of just make a transactional connection, but really to get to know more about people and connecting them on a little bit more like human/personal way, and understanding what is that excites them, whether it's something connected to their current role, or maybe that's something that they're working on the side, or maybe that's something that they want to start doing. So, and you could be catalyst for that. Actually, many times people sometimes need just that encouragement or that connection. And when you're really open-minded and curious and listening, it doesn't mean that you don't need to have your pitch ready when they ask about your elevator pitch, I mean. So what is that you do? And also try to customize your pitch about explaining what is that you do. Because when you talk, for example, to a potential co-founder, your pitch will be different. When you talk to an investor, your pitch will be different. When you talk to a potential customer, your pitch should be different. It cannot be the same pitch. You will change a little bit because you want to make it really, really clear for them. What is that you do? What is the problem that you solve? And what is your secret sauce?
Yes, and we dove a little bit into funding. I do want to ask you some more questions about that. Another thing to mention, though, to wrap up around networking, a friend of mine yesterday who's a fellow woman entrepreneur, so we get together and have these sometimes 2-hour sessions where we do a little commiserating, a little strategizing, encouragement, whatever it takes to get us through, right? And she and I were talking, and I was sharing with her just how I recently realized, and maybe we all do it sometimes we're so focused on the new connections, or certainly in the age of social media, growing numbers or how many people, et cetera, and we forget about nurturing the connections we already have. So I was telling her, even if someone has just 500 followers or on whatever platform, et cetera, I was like, if you had even half of that, 250 new clients, would your business be doing well? You know, unless you're some huge business. For most solopreneurs, or if you contacted half of those, all those people, and at least half of them you got in a conversation with, and we don't think, but we're thinking, no, but I need 1 million. Well, it doesn't matter if you have 1 million followers, but you don't ever engage with those people and have those conversations. So we just talked about being more strategic about nurturing relationships, and from followers, and I will say even more so, actual people that you've met at a conference and you follow up like, hey, we met at the so-and-so, how's it going? Or I just want to check in with you. How's everything? It doesn't have to be a heavy sort of check-in. I've even, I mentioned in my book, and I heard this on a podcast once, reaching out to people saying, hey, just checking in with you. How are you? No rush to get back. So that alleviates the person feeling pressure. But I just wanted to see what's new with you, what you're excited about these days. So there's a lot of ways I think we forget to nurture the people we already have, even the most casual contact with, who might end up being, I've done that with people, whether they reach out to me or I to them, and they end up becoming clients, or they have a great referral, or so that's something I want people to remember too, because we get a lot of times easily caught up in, I need more people, I need new people. It's like, well, what about you already have? These are people that you already have.
Sometimes if you do something also new, you need to update these people. Someone recently reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, Anna, I saw you're like organizing this and that, and you're doing this. Congrats on the book. I'm looking forward to the conference. A quick update on my end. That's what I've been up to. And then she listed basically 3 things that were also relevant, kind of. It was not just I'm doing this for the sake of writing to me, but she was explaining the impact that she's doing at her company, and just updating me. Like she said, I mean, I don't remember, but she said maybe text me whenever you are in Boston. I said, yeah. And it's kind of, I love that summary because it gives me also more clarity on what she's doing currently and context. So you want to be also thinking about that when you are reaching out to someone, how that you will be updating them. And because yeah, I do agree that you need to be also thinking how you can lean in. And speaking of followers, there is one thing that is very important, like don't be fooled by the amount of followers. I know these numbers matter, but some of the very influential people are also private people, and they might have just an email, they might not have tons of followers. And if you manage to get into their network and build really meaningful connection, sometimes they can open doors that you weren't thinking that you kind of could knock into. So it could be really, really powerful. I think that you need to be treating people with respect and kindness, and also be strategic about the connections that you have, and the connection that you need to have. Because you need to be doing both. You need to be
Yes.
having new people reaching out, but not for the sake of having new people, but thinking strategically. What are the people you want to have in the network? Where are you headed? Why do you need them? What impact do you want to make with them together? You know, not just like what can I gain from them, but what can you make with them together? So kind of thinking of how can you be building your network in a way that you surround yourself with people with who you can build great things together.
Thank you for mentioning about messaging about some people that you really want to be in touch with being private or maybe not on a social network in the same way that,
Yeah.
many people are. I remember doing I think I was it was not a speaking, it was like a workshop or it was some dialogue with a group of people on Zoom. That's all I remember years ago. And I ended up having a debate, a friendly debate, but with one of the women because I was suggesting to someone with reaching out how to, get an email together or find their email or reach out to someone to see about having a more direct kind of contact beyond, other than in person, obviously, but she needed to reach out to them to book them on a show or something like that. Someone else in the group said, don't even bother with email, go to their social media and send them a DM message. Now, of course, you can do both, but I just mentioned, just as you sort of did, I said, everybody isn't as active on social media. Even if, so for me, for example, people have said to me, I sent you a message and I said, oh, I didn't see it. Did you text it? Did you email it? They're like, oh, I sent you a DM on Instagram. I'm like, okay, I don't, there's nothing against that. I go, but I don't check it regularly. But I do check email because contracts come through. Sorry for the noise. They're doing
Hmm.
some work upstairs, but contracts come through email. Money comes through, more things, business, super
Yeah,
business focus. So just for people to keep in mind, you mentioned just to keep in mind, there's a lot of different ways you have to determine the person's communication style. The CEO that you
true,
want to reach out
true.
to
Yeah.
might not be active on, whatever platform.
I
So
think there is, yeah, that's you need to be really mindful of that. I do agree with that. One thing to think is that whenever someone doesn't respond to you, don't take it personally. I mean,
yes,
I cannot stress like this
yes.
sometimes when people reach out to me, sometimes they would follow up second, third time, and usually I respond, but sometimes I have so much workload that I physically not able to respond, or I don't have maybe an immediate kind of solution for you or someone I
Or
have
even
in
you
mind.
intend to respond, you might forget because so much
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
going
You
on.
started writing. It was like, oh
Right,
my God, did they respond to you?
right.
And this is like, I would say really be that's why I think where you need to be not again, it's not about being you think too much about yourself in this moments. You need to be thinking there is so many things going on in people's life that it might be so crazy. This is the last thing. They don't have literally energy or capacity to help you. And that's why, and that's what I wrote also in my book, you need to build a strong network. So you don't count on then one person that, Elaine or Anna will help me. You don't count on that one person. You build a strong network. If that person is not available, don't take it please personally. It's not like that they're a bad person. Or like say I wasn't checking Instagram. Yeah, I mean that happens. Like also you can contact them via email. But if they don't respond via email and you know they're active, there might be tons of things going on in their life. And it's really, really rarely personal. Like they don't like you or something. They just
Exactly,
ignore you.
right. I
I think
totally
that's so
agree. And I
important
think
to set
the
this.
gold is in the follow-up. And think about yourself, as we just talked about, you might miss it or you might not be on a platform. So there's a lot of reasons you might
Yeah.
have the best intentions. I reached out to someone recently, someone who actually works at LinkedIn. She and I were talking about courses. I sent her an email a couple of weeks ago and I just followed up real quick to check in. And I just said, hey, she said, oh my goodness, the message was in draft. Meanwhile, if I had created this whole story. She's like, I had a question, I put it in draft, I forgot to send it, but the goal, if I hadn't followed up, that message might have sat there. She would have
Thanks
thought
for
that,
mentioning that follow up.
yeah,
I think this is so important. And I mean, like, whenever people follow up, the response rate goes so much higher. And especially if there was some progress on that conversation and they
exactly.
literally forget to send that send button. This happens so often, especially if you have to respond tons of emails, if you're dealing with a huge workload, like you cannot think clearly. You thought you responded, but actually you didn't. So I think the power of follow up, this is so crucial. And that's when we speak about networking. Also, kind of whenever you met someone online or in person, do follow up with them. Like,
Yes.
like,
And
like, don't
most people
forget to do
appreciate
that.
it, the gentle follow-up. People are
Exactly.
like, thank you so much for following up, or oh, I
Yeah.
forgot, or I meant to send you this or that. Yes, absolutely. Go
It's
ahead.
also a little bit kind of liberating in a way whenever you do, like sometimes it happens that you don't have an immediate solution or answer to. I think it's also okay to kind of respond to that email, that follow up, for example, in this case, and say, hey, I'm right now, I don't think I have the capacity maybe to help you, but let's follow up sometime in fall, and let's see how's the progress going to be. So I think that whenever we don't have like a solution or support to provide or resources, whatever that is, if we can really write something short and I guess not nice is a very wrong word to say, but friendly in a way, that would just give that person a response, because sometimes people would follow up 10 times, stuff like
Right. Exactly. You just go ahead, and
and
that's what I
they
said.
it's
I'm
just
gonna make you tell me no to stop
feels
contacting
feels
you.
this huge pressure that
Yeah.
kind of they count only on you, and that's why I encourage people to really think who else can help them. Like, don't really bet on that one person, especially sometimes you might even not know them well, or even if you do, again, there could be tons of things that are going on in their life, and it's just crazy, gets at moments. So yeah.
Exactly. And one of the things that I recently started in my business after actually taking a course about this, since we're talking about connection a lot today and follow up, is reaching out to, like we said, starting with your warm network sort of thing or your warm contacts, et cetera, but even new people, looking at where you have connections, followers, email lists, et cetera, and sending just a brief outreach of, hey, so and so, great to connect with you, or I'm so glad we're connected on LinkedIn. Are you currently, so for me, for example, I'll say, are you currently on a journey of professional development and looking for leadership support, or just some quick question that's relevant to whatever kind of work you do? And then say, so I'd love to hear from you. Don't send, I'm not sending my whole framework. I'm not sending a long pitch. I'm not sending something that's easy. I'm literally asking a question. Now, people might not respond, which I've lost nothing other than the few minutes it took me to send them a message. Or what has happened, and this is how I tend to connect with potential clients, they do respond, especially if it really resonates with them at this time. Like they are currently looking for leadership development. They do need an executive coach, or they know someone who they'll respond. And then you get in conversation with someone as opposed to just outwardly, and not saying anything's wrong with that method, but I have found this works for me. And I found keeping it short, as you mentioned, and brief in that
Short,
outreach.
yeah. Oh
I do,
yeah.
I do
Love
35
this.
of those a day. So this way it's and I'm not, if someone doesn't respond, I don't remember that one person unless it's someone I really wanted
Mm,
to talk to. But
mm,
this way
mm.
I know, hey, for me, I'm reaching out. So also if I reach out to you today, you might not get back to me till next week because of all the reasons that we mentioned, but I have a constant flow of outreach with people. So you can make that outreach, I want everyone to remember, super simple, still genuine, but asking, it's easier if you ask someone a yes or no question. If you're trying to get in a conversation with them, hey, are you currently looking for ways to get support with raising funding for your business? That's a yes or no question. And usually if it's a yes, people will share even more information. But you could easily do
Mm.
30 of those a day. Look at your followers, look at your connections, look at your, people like, I don't know anybody. Today, everybody knows at least 30 people. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
it's also not kind of being afraid to reach out to people that you don't know. I mean, as long as you provide
Yes.
context, I think
Yes.
that you need just keeping it very generic, just feels impersonal and no one appreciates this. So if you reach out to a new person, the person you don't know, but for example, you listen to checked out their background, just understand what would bring value to them. Perhaps, or maybe you came across their, talk, or you saw them at a conference, whatever that, is, just kind of really provide a little bit more context why you're reaching out, even if you don't have an immediate kind of action point to them, you just want to be connected, you admire the journey. I think people appreciate that too, because it's ultimately what positive impact do we make in people's life. And I think that when you are genuinely honest about how their words touched you or maybe made an impact in your life, in your career, people deeply appreciate that. And then, like you said, keeping it short. I mean, oh my God, where do I start? I mean, whenever sends me like a huge email, I never honestly have patience to finish it. So I mean, I don't know how this works. Like
Yes.
right
Even if you
now,
want to
also,
finish it, you just, oh, I'll look at it later.
no,
And then that later never
unless
comes.
it really makes sense, I would say never do that. literally don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm.
And right, I mean, you know, what people started to do with the help of ChatGPT, they started to extend text a lot. So please use the prompt short and short and short and
Right.
please. I mean,
Right.
this is serious. I mean, you need to bring your knowledge, your intelligence, your ask, and then to ask ChatGPT, what do you want? You know, where do you want it to go to make the tone more friendly, make it more appealing to a CEO, make it more appealing to investors. But you need to be really mindful of the time of the person who is receiving tons of emails per day. So the more influential the person is, the more likely they are receiving tons of emails per day. And the more likely that you want to stand out, but you want to be really, really clear in your message why you're reaching out. Subject is important, message is important, but you need to keep it really short, up to the point. I don't mean it's too short so it's not clear why you're reaching out, but it shouldn't be like super long so people don't have time or patience to read it. I feel like women want to be A, providing all the details, B, to just not to cut to the chase and like try to be nice and then phrase it super nice, if, please, kindly, and men are more like direct. And I think that with time and experience, you will learn to balance that, but you will learn to appreciate your time so much that you don't have time. It doesn't mean that your email will be unfriendly. It's just you will be a little bit more direct and up to the point, and still with a respect to people's time.
And I think people, such a great point. I think people often confuse, and we tend to do this, have been trained, conditioned to do this to women, mistake direct for being unkind, which it's not
Yeah,
at all. You know,
yeah.
it's all in the tone, whether you're, however you say it, it's all in the tone and your intention, all of those things built into it. But passive language, I think, like you mentioned, like, oh, I was just checking to see such and such, or thanks so much for so and so, and which is, it's lovely and it's flowery and it's all those things. You could just say, checking in to see such and such, getting back to you on this, super straightforward, direct, and not, but that none of that is
I know,
unkind.
yeah, yeah, that's true. I know in some cultures, and we need to be, I think, very mindful about
That's a
some
good point.
cultures because they appreciate, sometimes they would really love it to be really direct. They don't beat around the bush and they're super direct. Even they will say this is like crap. I don't like or I'm not interested. And some people will be really, really like, they would say this is so kind of you, thanks for thinking of me. And again, I mean, it depends on the field you
It's a
work
great
in.
point.
I mean, you want to be kind to people, but when they wrote you a short email, you probably will have time to respond to that and use all the words to make them still feel good. Again, like you said, like instead of the word just, yeah, I mean, sometimes I might also still kind of use that, but it's about thinking how can you use the text which is up to the point, and ChatGPT can help with that. Make it sound the way you want to make it sound. Why don't you use that? But don't trust ChatGPT to create it instead of you. ChatGPT will
Super.
polish it in the direction you want it to go. It needs to be guided. I mean, it could be ChatGPT, it could be some other tools. There are tons of tools. I'm just giving an example of how you can leverage tools versus delegating two tools to create it for you. I think that's a
Right.
huge mistake. So
Culturally, too, I think, thank you for mentioning that. I also try to be aware when reaching out to different cultures in the salutation. So all cultures don't necessarily respond to, hey, so and so, where it's super
exactly.
casual. I'm like, where am I writing this for? Hello, hi there, so you have to be very
You need
aware
to
of
test
that.
the ground.
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
very aware of that. One last
yeah.
question I want to ask you, and I'm really enjoying this conversation about connection, which I think is important always, but I think it's certainly during this time, people are trying, in the age of everything going computerized, AI, et cetera, we need to kind of
Yeah.
remember these human connections. But I want to talk to you briefly about women, especially in tech. Since we did talk about numbers, we always
Yeah.
often think about scale, 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 bigger, 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 numbers, numbers. But what is your advice for the ways right now that women leaders need to sustain their businesses? And is that something, or should we be focusing on scale? What do you feel like, considering the times that we're in globally?
I mean, scaling is important, but sustaining business is crucial because sustainability is ultimately about long-term vision and also, in a way, financial resilience. So we need women people, general business owners, need to be focusing on on recurring revenue models, but also diversifying income streams and building strong teams. Building a strong team depends how big your business is, because you cannot be doing it all alone. But as you grow, as your business grows, you rely on different teams to bring that expertise. So you need to be balancing. It's also it getting disrupted all the time, especially if we talk about technology. So it's about also staying ahead of industry shifts and continuously innovating to remain competitive. It's especially in technology, things that worked yesterday won't work today. And people who are startups, even in a way, they're not building products for today, they're building products for tomorrow, because products for today already exist. So we don't need that. So, and sometimes, but I mean, of course, the market needs to be ready. I don't mean something super innovative, but you see how it accelerates with AI. It's like crazy. I mean, it's at the speed we've never seen, and it's like we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So all that science fiction movies that we were seeing will become the reality soon, and we even don't know how it's going to develop at what speed. And it's exciting and it's crazy at the same time. So sustainability is very important, but you want to stay innovative, and you need to stay open-minded. And that's also coming back to also networking. And I think that it never happens like you just stop networking. You need to be constantly networking, but it shouldn't be like a race. It needs to be intentional.
So tell us, Anna, I've enjoyed this conversation. I love this. I love talking about community and connection. I'm all about it. We started off talking about support, right?
Yeah.
Support is sexy. Obviously, that's why we're here for the podcast. But tell people how they can best connect with you and WomenTech Network, and any events or things that are coming out. Where should we go to find out most information?
Yeah, I mean, I'm active on LinkedIn, so if you have some questions, but I mean, our website, womentech.net. We also have our upcoming conference. It's a huge global conference, so you literally can join from wherever you are, because it's virtual first conference. It's Women in Tech. It's going to be actually our sixth annual conference, sixth edition of Women in Tech Global Conference. It's going to happen in May 20th, 22nd. It's 3 amazing days. Leadership, so Chief in Tech Summit, AI and Key Tech Summit, Career Growth Summit, tons of networking, also in-person locations in Key Tech hubs. So it's going to be an exciting conference as every year.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate. We talked earlier how you could talk to people for an hour and a half. I have tons of
Yeah,
other questions
I
I could
love
ask
that.
you, but
I
this
love that. Well,
this is
that's
good.
why one of the reasons that I also appreciate being on your podcast. It just feels like we could talk for hours.